All right. Well, good evening, everybody, and thanks so much for taking the time to join us for tonight's webinar. My name is Kate Four, and I'm the Executive Director for Vermont Woodlands Association. We're really delighted to host tonight's webinar as part of our Climate Smart Forestry series, which is offering monthly webinars and wood walks designed to delve into a whole variety of different topics as it relates to climate change and sustainable forest management. So for those of you who are not familiar with Vermont Woodlands Association, we are a statewide organization, nonprofit organization, I should say, that works to promote healthy forests through good forest stewardship. And we do that through a variety of ways, including programs like tonight's webinar. So we are like I said, a member-based nonprofit organization. A lot of our funding comes from the support of folks just like you. So I recognize many of the names out there. Please, if you're a member, feel free to put your hand up, and you can do that by indicating on the bottom row, your reaction if you are looking for that, or go ahead and chime in the chat box. But like I was saying, we are a member-based organization, and so we really rely on support from folks like you to help us in our mission to educate and advocate for the stewardship, use, and enjoyment of our woodlands here in Vermont. And so thanks again to all of our members, for helping to make programs like tonight possible. And if you're interested in learning more about our organization, who we are, what we do, and some of our upcoming programs, you can check us out online at at vermontwoodlands.org. So that's where you'll find us, at vermontwoodlands.org. All right. So tonight's presentation is titled "The Fascinating Life of Wood Turtles." And I was saying to Molly and Kiley before everybody signed on this evening, this is a topic that I've been thinking about for a while now. And just really excited for the presentation tonight that'll cover both the ecology and some conservation strategies in thinking about wood turtles. Tonight's topic is really timely. As many of you know, wood turtles are really on the move right now, but it's also timely because wood turtles are a species of concern, and I'm not going to steal the thunder from Kiley and Molly, so that's all I'll say for now. But there's certainly a lot of concern about the trends in wood turtle populations, here in Vermont, but also across the region. And so tonight's presentation actually comes on the tail of a newly released conservation guidelines or conservation considerations for forest landowners and managers that was put together by the Wildlife Conservation Initiative. And we're going to talk more about that tonight. But Vermont Woodlands Association was really proud to be a member of a 16-organization collaboration that recently released that guidance. And again, I know we'll be talking more about that tonight. Our presenters tonight are Kiley Briggs, who is the Director of Conservation with the Orianne Society, and Molly Parren with Vermont Fish and Wildlife. And so with that introduction, I'm going to go ahead. Oh, actually, one more thing before I turn things over to you guys to present the webinar tonight. I did want to just go through a couple logistics. Like you heard in the beginning of the webinar, tonight's webinar is being recorded. We do like to share these programs out with folks on our YouTube channel. So I do ask that if you haven't already, please go ahead and mute your microphone during tonight's presentation. However, we really do want to hear from you. I think one of the things that makes these webinars so great is that it's an opportunity not only to get information, but also ask questions and interact. So please feel free to use the chat box, which you'll find on the control panel of the Zoom screen at the bottom of your screen, I believe, for most folks. Please go ahead and use that chat box to ask questions, share any questions throughout the presentation. We will be holding most of the questions, I think, probably towards the end of the presentation, but if there's pressing questions or, feel free to start piling them into the chat box. I also like to encourage folks, because, we have a fairly small group tonight, that if you want to ask a question live, you're welcome to unmute yourself, put your video on, and ask a question directly of our presenters, again, during the question and answer period. For those of you, if there's any consulting foresters in the audience tonight, tonight's presentation was approved for continuing education credits. So please go ahead and put in the chat box, your name and license number, and I'll follow up with you directly about the credits. Okay, I think that's it for logistics. And so now with that, I'll turn things over to Kiley and Molly for the presentation.
Great, thank you, Kate. So My name is Kiley Briggs. As Kate mentioned, I'm the Director of Conservation for the Orianne Society. We are a nonprofit organization focused on conserving critical habitat for rare reptiles and amphibians. We have a few different focal landscapes where we target most of our work, and what we call our Great Northern Forest Initiative is really focused around turtle conservation programs in the northeastern United States. Molly is joining me this evening. Molly works for the Vermont Fish and Wildlife Department, and I'll turn it over to her in a little bit, as the Fish and Wildlife Department was a little more heavily involved with the development of those forest management guidelines that were just released. So she'll provide an overview of those guidelines. So wood turtles, let's just sink right into it. First, what is a wood turtle? What do they look like? Wood turtles are a medium-sized turtle. They get about 9 inches long. They have a brown shell, black head, orange legs. And this is my stock image of just one of the more vibrantly colored young wood turtles that I've seen in Vermont. Really highlights the typical field marks, but perhaps a little exaggerated with the orange on the legs. They're not always quite that vibrant. This is more of a stereotypical, like your textbook image of a wood turtle, a little more muted in coloration. The males, which this one is, can sometimes have more dark coloration on the legs. And something that I'll point out on the shell is that they have these concentric rings on each of the armored plates on the back of their shell that almost give the turtle in appearance as if it was carved out of wood, which is part of how they get their name, wood turtle. And their Latin name, Glyptomys insculpta, is really referencing that sculpted appearance of the shell. Sometimes their shells can be very vibrant in coloration. This is a really dramatic example from eastern Vermont. The yellow markings, I've just never seen another wood turtle that even comes close to this sort of patterning on the shell. But between these first 3 photos, that really shows you the range of color and pattern that you can see on these turtles. This is a northeastern species, northern New England, a little farther south down into northern Virginia, and they also wrap around the Great Lakes region into Minnesota. In Vermont, there are species that I describe as being widespread but uncommon in most of the places where they occur. They're one of our special concern species and a high priority species of greatest conservation need. At the federal level, they aren't currently listed as threatened or endangered, but they are under review by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, so they may get that designation at some point in the near future. We will know soon. And as far as where you can actually find them in Vermont, although they're mostly a statewide species, there are some areas where they're less likely to be found. Western Addison County, Western Franklin County, the spine of the Green Mountains, for a variety of different reasons. The mountain areas, I think, are just too steep. You don't get those meandering valley streams that you'll learn about in a moment, where you expect to find wood turtles. And I think the parts of the Champlain Valley just have too intense of a history of agriculture right up to stream edges, and there may be some water quality issues that are limiting their ability to survive there. Wood turtles are a river valley specialist, so they live in streams during the winter. They hibernate in the streams. During the winter, you may find them in undercut banks on the bottom of shallow pools, wedged into log jams. During the summer, they're more of a land turtle. They can forage upwards of 1,000 feet from streams, and that's just typically. Sometimes they can travel quite a bit farther away from water, and during the summer they can spend weeks or even months on end away from water, and just periodically make those return trips to their streams and then head back out into the woods for some more foraging time after that. Now, when I'm looking for a place to survey for wood turtles, this is the type of stream that I'm usually looking for. A meandering valley stream that has lots of twists and turns. Ideally, it's nice to see some sand or gravel bars on the insides of those turns. That's where the wood turtles would prefer to nest. Where there are oxbow wetlands in the former river channels, that's another thing that's greatly enhancing their habitat. And as far as what the land use around these streams can be, that varies widely. On land, these turtles are really sort of a habitat generalist. Forest interiors, open meadows, farm fields, you name it, they'll use it. And within this type of habitat, I think of their land use in two different zones. So your average wood turtle will spend vast majority of its time within about 300 feet of their stream. That's the blue buffer drawn around the stream. However, they will periodically travel farther, and some individuals will spend more time farther away from the streams. But it's about a 1,000-foot zone that will encompass the vast majority of the wood turtle's habitat use around streams. The ones traveling farther than that will be an outlier. Their active period. So in the winter, they're in the streams, not on land. And it's the time that they're on land where they're at the greatest risk of getting themselves killed in one way or another. They emerge typically sometime in April, sometimes early May. That varies a little bit. I've seen them emerge in mid-March on really warm early springs. Late May through June is when they're nesting. And then July through September, that's the bulk of their foraging time period, when they're making the greatest distance travels away from the streams. And then in late September through October, they come back to the rivers. And whenever they're concentrated on the streams, that'd be in the early spring or in the fall. That's when most of the breeding occurs. And then by the time November rolls around, they're pretty much back in the water for the winter, although they do occasionally emerge on if the conditions are right. So when they're on land, I think most people here have probably seen a turtle of some sort basking, sunning itself on a rock or a log above a wetland, pond, lake. And that's very common for things like painted turtles, more aquatic turtles. Wood turtles, because they spend so much time on land, they don't have the advantage that a painted turtle has when a predator approaches them. A painted turtle can just let go of a rock or log and sink, and the predator can't get them. Wood turtles, if they're on land, hundreds of feet from water, they rely on not being seen. So this is a good example of a wood turtle sunning itself right here. All you're really seeing is the edge of the shell sticking out of some debris. In this case, we are near the stream, but that's how they would sun themselves, way out in the woods too, just tucked into vegetation with a little bit of their shell sticking out. This is another example of a wood turtle sunning itself. Although I wouldn't expect anyone to see it in this image, you have to get really close up to realize that there's a wood turtle hiding in the brush. And sticking my fingers into where this turtle is hiding, it's warm in there. This turtle is thermoregulating, keeping itself plenty warm, and also pretty much invisible to people walking by. And here's one found out in the middle of the woods, another one with a really pretty shell. And I was with a group of people talking about some habitat restoration options for the property, and we were standing near this turtle for maybe 10 minutes before I realized that it was just basically at our feet staring up at us the whole time. And I didn't tell anyone where it was. I just said, hey, just so everyone knows, there's a wood turtle within 10 feet of us right now. Who can find it? And it took the others about a minute or two to locate the turtle. But then once you see it, oh wow, it's obvious there's a turtle right here. But they're masters of blending in and not being seen. As a result, when I'm doing outreach to landowners, talking with farmers, getting permission to do surveys, I'll hear things like this. And I'm quoting a very specific farmer right here. I've lived here for over 50 years, and if there were orange-legged turtles in my field, I'd know about it. And he did let me survey his property. He was interested in coming out with me just to see. And within about half an hour, we'd found several wood turtles, and he was singing a very different tune after that encounter. And he texts me every now and then. Still, he'll go out in early spring and see if he can find those turtles again. But it was quite a surprise to him that he was sharing his property with wood turtles that whole time. So getting a little more into the habitat specifics, nesting habitat is one of the more critical features for wood turtles. And they're typically going to nest on a sand or gravel bar right on the banks of the river. The sandbar just needs to be high enough above the water that it won't flood most summers, but during spring floods, you can expect these sites to be underwater. But since they're laying in late May through early July, at that point, the spring floods have passed. If this sort of nesting habitat isn't available, females sometimes can travel multiple miles up or downstream in search of a good place to nest, or they'll go into upland habitat and nest in backyards, roadsides, anywhere where they can find exposed sunny soils. They'll lay 4 to 12 eggs. 9 or 10 is what I've seen most times when I've had a chance to count the eggs. Nest survival is very, very low. However, the approach that this species takes is really depend on the longevity of adults. Live a long time, nest every year, and eventually the young will actually hatch and survive. Pretty much everything is going to eat baby turtles. The eggs will hatch sometime in early to mid-September usually, and the hatchlings are almost impossible to find during surveys. They hit the rivers and basically go into incognito mode. I think they just pretend to be a leaf for the first 2 or 3 years of their life. And once they get to 3 or 4 years old, their shell is strong enough to begin protecting them from some predators. And that's when we start seeing them on surveys typically. And up until that point, they're pretty much scared of everything. Raccoons, skunks, foxes, those are your typical subsidized predators that are more common on the landscape due to human activities, but lots of things eat turtles, baby turtles that we don't even think about as predators. Crows and chipmunks, for example, just go nuts over baby turtles. You can think of a baby turtle as being sort of like a savory Oreo, kind of hard on the outside, squishy on the inside, delicious. What do wood turtles eat? They're what we call opportunistic omnivores, so they eat a little bit of everything. Young have a higher protein diet. Slugs and snails are a very big part of the diet of any wood turtle, regardless of their age. It's very common to find these animals with just slime stuck all over their face, and it's just slug slime. We call that slug face when it happens. But adults, as far as volume, are probably eating more vegetation than they are slugs, snails, and other protein sources. Leafy greens, fruits, really just they're omnivores. They eat a little bit of everything. Something that is kind of cool about wood turtles is that while they're growing, you can age them by counting growth rings on their shell. So each of these plates on the shell, called a scute, will develop a growth ring just like the growth rings on a tree, and you can count those to get the age. And in this case, this small circle here would be year 0, and then we count out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then it gets a little fuzzy. So at least 12 years old. However, a wood turtle only grows for about 20 years, and they can live a lot longer than that. And at that point, wear and tear will begin to polish their shell so that it becomes harder and harder to see those growth rings. And while it's really impossible to know on a turtle by turtle basis, how old is this animal if it's not growing anymore, some studies have tried to model what amount of shell wear and smoothing is associated with different ages. And the best information that I have found suggests that a turtle that is completely polished on the top, no evidence of growth rings at all, should take about 80 years. That can happen faster in really rocky environments, but they live about as long as people, and there are a lot of things about their life history that's similar to people. They become reproductively capable at about the same age, but it takes them a few more years before they're actually good at it. Similar lifespan as people, but where they really are different is that 80-year-old turtle is still reproductively active and can still lay eggs. This one can't, though, because it's a male. That said, the last time I saw him, he was mating, so still got it. I wouldn't be here talking to you if everything was going great for wood turtles. There are a number of threats that have made things very difficult for them. Their populations have declined drastically. And I'm going to run down through this list, and then we'll get a little more into the specifics. So really, any sort of riverbank or floodplain disturbance is going to be a risk. The biggest risk being wheeled equipment close to streams. Really, any sort of mowing or agricultural activity that involves heavy machinery or forestry within 300 feet of a wood turtle stream it carries the risk of crushing those animals. Roadkill is another big threat. There's an international black market for these animals. They are sometimes brought home as pets. Usually when people do that, they don't realize how bad that is for the turtle's population. And just direct habitat loss, invasive vegetation, and recreation in their habitat, be it on ATVs or even in some cases, foot traffic can be a really big disturbance to them. So sinking into those details a little bit, this is an example of what I think of as nice former wood turtle habitat. So we have the valley stream flowing through the middle, farm fields on both sides, and a major highway on the other. Because these turtles spend so much time on land, they would be foraging quite a bit in the meadow habitat. if the turtles are trying to get to the woods, they have to cross either the farmland or a major highway. And these fields are getting hayed at least a couple times per year. There's a lot of traffic on this road every single day. So as these turtles are yo-yoing back and forth from the stream to the upland and spending time in the meadows, they're just getting hit by tractors, hit by cars. It's not good. Farm equipment, more specifically, this is a turtle that I know pretty well. I showed her picture was up just a moment ago, but what you might not have noticed is that she's missing her left front foot, and she's also missing a few inches from the edge of her shell. She was already missing her foot when I first found her. The shell injury happened about a year later when she was nicked by hang equipment. She has since been hit by farming equipment one more time and suffered additional damage to her shell, but she has managed to survive all of that. This is another turtle from the same area. She wouldn't come out of her shell for this picture, but huge gash on the back of her shell, likely from tilling equipment, possibly mowing equipment. It's really difficult to know for certain. That injury could be decades old. What we don't really know is when these turtles are killed when they're injured by farm equipment or cars and they're not killed instantly, how many can actually survive versus how many die as a result of their injuries due to infection. We have no idea. If they live, we have an opportunity to see them and their scars for decades, but if they don't survive, they've just turned to dust within a year, and we don't really see that. I've never found a freshly injured wood turtle. It's always been an injury that just is healed and there's nothing to do, and the turtle at this point is fine, but will always have these scars or missing limbs. Going back to the imagery of typical wood turtle habitat and their use zone. So again, blue is 300 feet, yellow is 1,000 feet. Within this area, where will they be spending the vast majority of their time? The white shaded area is where I would expect to see most wood turtle use. While they will use the interiors of farm fields, they seem to really like the edges between fields and more shrubby or forested environment, which creates in agricultural settings like this what I think of as the zone of death, where most of the turtles that are going to get killed by farming equipment are getting injured or killed. Graphic image coming up. There are a couple dead turtles. If you do not wish to see them, you may avert your eyes for just a few seconds. So as I mentioned, roadkill, also a really big issue. These are the first 2 wood turtles that I found when I moved to northeastern Vermont. And they were both on the same stretch of highway. And I found them only about 1 month apart from each other. And we know from a study that these populations are very sensitive to anything that's killing adults. If you have a typical stretch of wood turtle habitat with a reproductively capable population that has recruitment, say there's an adult population of about 100 turtles, they can only sustain the loss of maybe 1 turtle per year due to human causes, but that does cause eventual population decline. If we are removing 2 turtles per year out of the population, that population could be gone within 75 years. And 2 turtles per year is not very many if you're counting cars, tractors, raccoons, and all the other things that humans are contributing to their, causing their deaths with. Invasive plants, Japanese knotweed is the one that I usually think of as the biggest threat to wood turtles. The plant itself obviously isn't killing the turtles, but what it does do in some cases is overrun their nesting habitat, which can force the turtles to travel farther up or downstream or away from rivers to lay their eggs. So that can put the turtles into more dangerous settings if they're laying their eggs on the side of a road or in a backyard where there are domestic dogs or other threats. Invasive vegetation could contribute to the death of adult turtles indirectly that way. Subsidized predators. So as I mentioned, these would be predators that are more abundant as a result of human activities. Raccoons, skunks, and foxes are at the top of the list for subsidized predators. These are the ones that are eating the eggs. In some cases, especially if there isn't much nesting habitat available or near residential or agricultural areas where there are just really high levels of predator populations. Sometimes nearly 100% of nests can be dug up by these predators within a day or two of them being laid. And while a raccoon can't kill an adult wood turtle and get past its shell, they can cause significant damage to their legs. This is a wood turtle that Molly found last year, missing her front left limb and also missing an eye. Very common to see things like this. Again, I don't know what percent of these turtles that get that kind of injury survive versus die of infection later. We only really see them if they manage to recover. And it seems like between 12 and 20% of adult wood turtles are missing at least one leg. It varies a bit from population to population, but it's a lot. When we're doing wood turtle surveys, we expect on at least a weekly basis to bump into a turtle that's missing at least one leg. And I've seen 5 or 6 that were missing both of their front legs, to where they really were down to just an elbow. And it's just amazing to think that an animal, a turtle, could survive with no front legs. But apparently, as long as they have that elbow to help them over objects and barriers, they can survive, although the odds of survival for those two-legged turtles are fairly low, over a 10-year period. And illegal collection. There's a thriving international black market for these turtles, not just wood turtles, but a variety of species. I know growing up and learning about wildlife conservation, when I would think of poaching and wildlife trafficking, I think of like Africa, like black rhino horns, spider monkeys, like animals from the jungle. However, internationally right now, like on a global scale, most wildlife trafficking is from North America to other countries, and most of that is reptiles, and most of those reptiles are turtles. Wood turtles are one of the species really heavily targeted, so it is happening in our own backyards. And I mentioned all it takes is losing 2 turtles per year from a pretty average population to cause eventual extinction. A single poacher who really knows what they're doing could extract 10 or 15 turtles from a site in a single day if they know what they're doing. And that's really irreversible harm. Almost no amount of conservation work that I'm doing trying to restore their habitat can make up for poachers learning where a site is. And once that information is publicly known, as permanent damage. If a good site is leaked on the internet, that doesn't come off the internet very easily. So then poachers will always have the ability to find that location. Which is why even in presentations like this, what I don't do is name streams where I'm doing work, or provide a list of where all the high priority sites are to target habitat restoration, because that's just a roadmap for poaching. Don't advertise turtle locations publicly. Social media has been bad for this. And most people, they don't understand that when they find a wood turtle in their backyard and want to share that information on Facebook or whatever, that maybe it's okay to share a picture, but don't say where the turtle came from. And incidental collection, just the people finding turtles and bringing them home as pets, or maybe releasing them somewhere else. This is a widely cited study. I'll just read for you one paragraph. And all right. So throughout our study, the size of the forest remained the same. Road building was restricted. The quality of the air and water were constant. The wood turtle populations remained stable when people were denied access to the property. When this property was open to human recreation, which was just hiking and fishing, both populations of wood turtles declined steadily. The total number of turtles in both populations declined by 100% in 10 years. So there aren't turtles at those sites anymore. Now, this was New Jersey. And Jersey is not the same thing as Vermont. We have lots of places in Vermont where recreation and wood turtles are overlapping. Some of the sites where I do monitoring and encounter some of the best wood turtle populations that we have are at sites with a lot of human recreation. But this is just a good example of a worst case scenario of what can happen when a lot of people have access to sensitive wood turtle habitat. And the threat that these authors associated with the decline was people seeing the turtles on trails and bringing them home. So something to be aware of. And wrapping up the threats here, climate change. Things are changing on a day-to-day basis, it feels sometimes. And I think this will be very relevant on our minds over the next few days as we have the 90-degree heat wave in June, which is a little early for that kind of weather. There was a study a few years ago trying to predict what sort of habitat suitability will we have for wood turtles under different climate change scenarios, and where will the best remaining habitat be in the future. And on the left, basically the bluer the color, the better the habitat is for wood turtles. This is what we have right now for wood turtle habitat suitability. But then under different climate change scenarios, we see that southern portions of the range, that nice habitat retracts significantly. And what's left for the high quality prime habitat for wood turtles is northern New England and the Adirondacks, essentially. They may still occur in plenty of other places, but that will be the best of what's left for the wood turtles in a warmer future. And the way that climate change can impact wood turtles, varies a bit. We can expect warmer waters, which lowers oxygen levels in the water, which can degrade habitat, the suitability of a stream for their overwintering habitat. We can expect more intense floods, which can actually sometimes do a little good, but for the most part, that would be a bad thing for the wood turtles. Intense floods, especially in the early spring, can be a pretty big source of natural mortality for wood turtles. And the more intense the flood, the more turtles will be washed downstream and covered up by mud and drowned or just smashed into rocks. But that said, those really intense floods we had last summer, as a result of that, I'm seeing better nesting habitat in many rivers, even rivers where I don't think there was any good wood turtle nesting habitat before the floods. And now there are just these huge sandbars all over the place. And a lot of rec fields right now look like giant wood turtle nest sites. And I think that was mostly the sand and gravel from our town roads was repurposed into wood turtle nesting habitat as a result of those floods. So mostly bad news, but it's complicated. There might be some positives or silver linings to consequences of climate change. And ultimately, we won't really know what the impact of these turtles will be until it happens. So shifting gear a little bit, we'll talk about the good news, the things that can actually be done to restore and manage habitat for wood turtles. So there are lots of different types of management for wood turtle habitat, and I'm just going to touch on the most common things that we engage with landowners on and that we try to do. And then I'll turn things over to Molly for a few minutes to go over the forestry management guidelines that were recently released. So first and foremost, for wood turtles, riparian buffers. A riparian buffer is just a strip of land separating a stream from a farm field that we set aside as habitat and usually plant with trees or shrubs. That has a number of benefits for wood turtles, which I'll get into in a moment. But how big should those buffers be? Typically, the minimum buffer size for a lot of conservation programs is going to be about 35 feet. 50 feet is a little bit better. I see probably more 50 than 35-foot buffers. But in the case of wood turtles, really the bigger the better. The official best management practice for wood turtles would be a 300-foot riparian buffer. That is huge and too much for most landowners. So the yellow buffer drawn on this map is what a 300-foot buffer would look like in a typical Vermont river valley. That is the entire farmable landscape. So we're not going to achieve wood turtle conservation by approaching a landowner here and asking if they would consider establishing a 300-foot buffer. It's just not going to happen unless you bring enough money to the table for that person to retire. And even then, that might not be enough because it's also a way of life that you're asking these people to give up. It's just not going to happen in a lot of cases. And at really important sites for wood turtles, a 1,000-foot buffer would be even better, which is even less realistic. So my approach really is that any buffer is better than nothing, and the bigger the better. And if a site has wood turtles, that's a really good justification for going a little bit bigger with those buffers than you might otherwise consider. Say you might do 50 feet just for water quality and erosion purposes, but let's just see if we can get away with 100 or even 75. That is just a huge help. And then also for wood turtles, I think of buffers a little bit differently than how a river restoration specialist might think of a buffer. The biggest benefit to these buffers is getting equipment away from the river. So what that could mean for wood turtles is a 50-foot riparian buffer that's hands-off, no more machinery going in there. That's the safe zone. And then for that 50 to 200 to 300-foot zone, like the rest of the buffer, maybe that's just grazing cattle or using some growing crops that are less intensive in their harvesting requirements that don't require the same sort of heavy machinery. So you can be a little bit flexible, but I really can't stress enough that the benefit of a buffer for wood turtles, the biggest benefit is getting wheels and mower blades away from the river. So it doesn't mean you can't do anything in that buffer and have it be good for wood turtles, but as long as that buffer is big enough to protect water quality, you have some flexibility. And then also, you could manage that buffer or that area outside of the proper buffer later in the season. So if the management goal is to maintain open habitat and keep it as a meadow, but there's no need to harvest hay, then late season brush hogging would be an approach to consider. Mowing that field in early November instead of August. At that point, the turtles aren't in the fields anymore. So you can do that and not worry about killing them. And again, there is a water quality thing to consider here. Ideally, no matter what you're doing, there should be at least enough of a buffer to protect the water quality. Cows in the river, just not good for so many reasons. And while I would rather see this than intensive hay fields right up against the river for the wood turtles, this is causing huge problems with just nitrogen loads in the river. The stream bank itself is getting torn apart by cattle on a regular basis. If we could just get a 35-foot buffer here and then let the cows have the rest of the valley, that'd be a huge win for wood turtles. Restoring nest sites, that can take a couple different forms. One might be controlling invasive vegetation on the sandbars and restoring the natural habitat feature. But in cases where a river has been straightened or there is just no natural sandbar to work with, just bringing in a dump truck full of sand from the nearest place possible, so you're not introducing invasive like jumping worms or invasive seeds from some weird plant. Constructing nesting habitat can be really simple and do a lot of good for wood turtles. And yeah, right back to the invasive vegetation on a nest site. The gold standard with a lot of the partners that I work with is to use herbicides to control things like Japanese knotweed. And I think in the case of nesting habitat for wood turtles, that would be a reasonable approach. Less harm to the turtles than just letting the knotweed run rampant over the nest site and forcing the turtles to go lay their eggs on the side of a road. Yeah. And oh yeah, that's where we are. This is new. I wasn't expecting this at that point. All right. We're going to turn things over to Molly for a little bit to talk about the new forestry management guidelines.
Thanks, Kylie. Hi, everyone. So I'm Molly Parren. I am a technician with Vermont Fish and Wildlife Department. I work on our reptile and amphibian projects. And Vermont Fish and Wildlife was a part of this collaborative project to create this new document, which is sort of guidelines for forestry management that will benefit wood turtles. Kylie is in control of the PowerPoint. So Kylie, when I say slide, can you please change the slide? Slide. Thank you. So just to give a little background to how this came about. In 2023, the National Alliance of Forest Owners, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and the National Council for Air and Stream Improvement got together and signed an MOU formalizing the Wildlife Conservation Initiative, which is a voluntary collaborative partnership to conserve fish and wildlife species on private working forests. A year later, in 2024, the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies and the National Alliance of Forest Owners signed a new agreement to advance this collaborative, which sort of led to the projects we're at now. Slide. Thank you. And so this is where we are, the creation of wood turtles, conservation considerations for forest landowners. This was a document that was created through the collaboration of 16 different organizations, including Vermont Fish and Wildlife. It's about 4 pages long, and it's really geared towards helping forest landowners figure out how they can best manage their properties to benefit wood turtles. Slide. So there's going to be a variety of bullet points I'm going to go through, but I just wanted to give you an overarching idea of what is in this document. So the main topics include wildlife-friendly practices. So that's forest management that's compatible and beneficial for wood turtles, strategic timber harvesting options, mitigating vehicle risk on these different logging roads or what else might be associated with forest management, turtle-friendly stream crossing with these roads, and nesting area enhancement. Slide. So the first thing that is generally recommended when you're going to be foresting any timber around wood turtles is try to do that foresting or that harvesting in the inactive period for wood turtles. So as Kiley was describing, wood turtles can be these pretty far-ranging species that's really active, but that's only for a certain time of the year. The other part of the year, they're going to be in the streams. They're going to be overwintering. And if you're going to be harvesting timber, you can be pretty sure that if you're doing that in the winter, you won't be harming wood turtles. Kiley, could you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So this is just sort of a different way of showing what Kiley showed before, which is the inactive period and the active period for wood turtles. So from November to March, for the most part, you can expect wood turtles to be in the stream, to be under the ice, to be overwintering. And then from April to October, that's where they're going to be out of the stream more often, moving around. They'll be emerging, nesting, foraging, coming back. And so in an ideal world, November to March is a great time to do your timber harvest. Kiley was talking about how these are kind of changing depending on the conditions. The first time I saw a wood turtle this year was March 8th. So that was early, and who's to say what's going to keep happening? So I kind of created this gray zone on this figure just to show that November, March, April, October, that area, turtles might be in, they might be out. If they're out, they're probably going to be pretty close to the stream. So that provides a little bit of wiggle room if you're in a position where you can't, obey these exact guidelines, but you want to be helpful. If your only option is to harvest in April, if you're not close to a stream, that might be okay. So I kind of just say this to say, these are guidelines. You can reach out to to Kiley, to Fish and Wildlife if you want help figuring out how to tailor these guidelines to where you are and what you can do. Slide, please. And so the next thing that we really kind of recommend is how to have access roads that aren't harmful to turtles. So if you have spur roads that you use occasionally for timber harvest, but you don't use them year-round, if you can close those at certain times of years, that's great. You can make them walking access only. That's great to avoid crushing turtles, but that's also great for reducing access to these sites. As Kiley described, there's this remarkable black market that has popped up for wood turtles that has made them incredibly vulnerable. So the less access you can give people to these populations, the better. And then, of course, the potential for crushing can be a problem. So if you're going to be building new roads, it's great to keep those outside of that 300-foot buffer that Kiley described, which is really their high activity zone. And then just sort of keeping the people you work with aware of these turtles and what their needs are. I grew up with a bumper sticker on our car that said, "I break for turtles, frogs, sticks, and big leaves." I don't expect that to be everyone and how they drive. So if you have someone who's driving a logging truck, say, and you can just tell them, hey, avoid the larger round objects in the road, that could be surprisingly helpful in just avoiding the killing and the take of an adult turtle, which, as Kiley described, can be really hard to replace and take a long time. Slide. So this is actually from a different guideline management option that I found. It's a little more in depth, but I just wanted to steal their photos. So that is why I'm showing this here. So you can see these two photos on your right, which show different access roads. So on the left, this is probably a road that's not used as much, maybe seasonally for different timber harvests. If it's an option to kind of shut that road off to traffic when you're not using it, that's a great way to protect wood turtles. On the right, you can see there's a blurry little red arrow, and that's pointing at a wood turtle that's on the road. So if you teach someone or working with someone and say, avoid these blobs on the road, that can be surprisingly helpful. And so we encourage that. Slide. And so along with roads, sometimes, roads will cross over streams. In an ideal world, we wouldn't have roads that go over wood turtle streams, but that's not realistic. So what we can do is try to create crossings that work well with turtles. And by that, I mean crossings that turtles can use. So in a lot of cases, you can have a culvert that might be just a little bit higher than the water. And in that case, a wood turtle just can't clear the lip to get through. And so what it will have to do is go up, around, over the road to get to the other side of the stream. And that makes it really vulnerable. Slide, please. So more photos from this other document. This shows different culvert options or crossing options. So A and B up top, these show the crossings that aren't ideal, the ones that turtles can't use or other wildlife in certain cases. So if possible, we encourage to use options more like C and D on the bottom, which are sort of these just clear, unimpeded paths underneath the road that wood turtles and other wildlife could use to get from one side of the stream to the other, or really just a continuous part of the stream. Slide. And then another thing is when you're building these crossings, you want to think about the substrate you're using. There's a term we use a lot in wildlife conservation called ecological trap, which is where you accidentally create a situation that looks really ideal to an animal, but ultimately is harmful to it. So say if you were to create a road crossing and you covered it with this nice sand and this sunny area that drains really well, that looks like perfect nesting habitat to a turtle. And what you don't want to do is give turtles perfect nesting habitat that's about to have trucks driving over it every day. So what we encourage is if you're going to be building these crossings, to use riprap or gravel. And if you are not going to be putting like soil and seeding over that, to fill that area with gravel so you don't have big gaps between the riprap. Next slide, please. And that's because of the size of hatchling turtles. They already have a pretty rough go of it at the beginning of their lives. Survival's not very high. So they're about 1.5 inches long. The little savory Oreos, as Kiley described, and if they fall in between this riprap, they aren't going to have much of a chance of getting out. So ideally, use riprap, but fill it with gravel so it's not getting filled with turtles. And it's hard to do all this stuff. So I just want to reiterate again that we don't expect this to be done perfectly. Anything helps. And if you want help tailoring these kinds of projects, we're a resource and we want to help with that. Slide. So I was talking about ecological traps with the road crossings, but similarly, you can end up creating nesting habitat that can be good. You just have to be thoughtful about how you do it. So, if you have this excavated area, you have an old gravel pit, these can be really appealing areas for turtle nesting. They have lots of solar exposure for incubating the eggs. There's well-draining soil. There's not a lot of vegetation, so the turtles can dig the nest and the hatchlings can dig out of the nest. So if you have a really great area that has all of these conditions, it's great to maintain that, to remove any encroaching vegetation, to keep this the nice nesting area it can be. But you have to think about the context that's in. You wouldn't want to maintain a perfect nesting area on the other side of a road than your stream, because that's sort of creating the ecological trap potentially, where turtles are going to cross a well-used road to try to nest, and that can become a problem. So if you're going to be maintaining these nesting areas, it's best to keep the traffic away, to not have trucks going to these gravel areas or that sort of thing. Again, an ideal world. Slide, please. So this is just showing some different photos about nesting. So on the left here are natural nesting areas that you can find along different streams that wood turtles will use. And in the center, you'll see more of the anthropogenic or man-made nesting areas that turtles can be drawn to. And you can kind of see the similarities. You see these sort of more open areas, kind of the looser soils. You can see why it would be appealing and why, if there is an option A on the left, why option B in the center could be a great option for wood turtles. And then on the way to the right, this just shows you what nesting might look like for wood turtles, and that's just sort of fun to keep an eye out for. Wood turtles leave really fun tracks. You can sort of see this equal, perfect line where their feet are moving. You see a tail drag, and you can kind of see where they've moved around scouting for a nesting area. You might see a hole where they tried to dig a nest. So those are the sort of things to look out for. If you see that, you might know you have a potential nesting area, and you might want to look into conserving that. Slide. And so I'm going to sort of just zoom through the last bits because they're kind of general comments. Outreach education is great. Anyone you're working with, to let them know what the turtles are like, what they need, share any resources you have with them. That's great. Reporting any sightings you have is really useful. Kiley and I can't get everywhere to find every wood turtle. We really need help from other people to know where they are. In Vermont, we're really lucky to have the Vermont Reptile and Amphibian Atlas. The website is there. You can go report any wood turtle you see to them. They share their data with us, and so we can work together to find out where wood turtles are and how they're doing. Slide. Similarly, if you want to know if you have habitat that's good for wood turtles, you want to find out if you have them, if there's something you can do to work to create better habitat for wood turtles, you can reach out to the Orianne Society. You can reach out to Vermont Fish and Wildlife. This is something we're invested in and we want to help with. So feel like you can do that. Slide. Similarly, we were talking about the issues with the black market. If you think someone is collecting turtles, we do want to know about it. We don't have an anti-poaching hotline. Some other states might. What we would encourage you to do is contacting your local warden. You can look that up online. And then also our herpetologist, Luke Groff, he couldn't be here tonight, but I'm sure he would like to know anytime there's the potential that someone's taking a wood turtle. I did not ask if I could put his email here, but he's not here, so that's what happens. Slide. And then here are just some other resources that might be useful to you. Northeastturtles.org has so many resources about wood turtles. So if this is something you're really interested in and want to get involved in, I really encourage going to that website. They have wood turtle right here. You can click on it and you go to a website or a second page that's just full of resources. Slide. Including what I've referenced a few times today, a guide to habitat management for wood turtles. This is a really great resource, but each resource is geared to different people and different needs. This one is 32 pages. It includes information about agriculture, human development, dam management. That's maybe not the best resource for everyone. It's great that that exists, but what's really great is slide. That we now have this resource. It's a little shorter, it's 4 pages, it's a lot more accessible, and it's just about forest management. So if you're, a land owner and manager who has a forest and you want to know what to do, definitely start here. This is a really exciting resource that's available. And if you want to know more, you can reach out to Fish and Wildlife. You can check out Northeast Turtles, and we appreciate anything you can do. Back to you, Kiley.
All right, thanks, Molly. That was helpful. I've just got a couple other things I want to touch on before we wrap things up here and answer some questions. So habitat restoration is one thing, but it costs money to do. And thankfully, there are some funding mechanisms to actually get that work paid for. In agricultural settings, farm bill conservation programs through either the Natural Resources Conservation Service, NRCS, or the Farm Service Agency can be very helpful. That'd be the feds love their acronyms, but CREP, Conservation Reserve Enhancement Program, WRE, Wetland Reserve Easements, EQIP, Environmental Quality Something Incentives Program. I'm forgetting that one. All different programs that can fund habitat restoration for wood turtles. And because wood turtles are a priority species for NRCS and a lot of these programs, when landowners apply, there's a quantitative process where not every project gets funded and there's a scoring process. If you have a project that will benefit wood turtles, that is more points on your application and a greater chance of getting that project funded. The United States Fish and Wildlife Service Partners Program can be very flexible in what they pay for and where they do the work. So if there's a habitat restoration project that doesn't qualify for a farm bill program, or the landowner doesn't want to go through one of those programs just due to like the paperwork requirements, the Fish and Wildlife Service might be able to help. On the state level, we have river corridor easements, which can provide financial incentives for landowners to establish at least a 75-foot wide buffer. If there are any practicing foresters here, I'm sure you're familiar with UVA or current use and the ecologically sensitive treatment areas. Wood turtle habitat can definitely count as an ecologically sensitive treatment area, the ESTA. Trees for Streams is another program that can pay for establishing a buffer on private land. And then on the non-governmental side, land trusts administering conservation easements. Usually that would be something that a landowner donates to a conservation organization. Basically, you would be a landowner would be giving the right to do certain land uses to that conservation org. Normally that would be development, but there are other things you can fold into conservation easements. And nonprofits such as my organization, the Orianne Society, we're here to find the right program for a given property, or in some cases, we may be able to do some of that work ourselves. These next few slides, I could have put several places in this presentation, but I think they're a good place to wrap things up, because we've told you a lot about what wood turtles do and how they use habitat and what's good for them. But I think telling you and showing you some pictures is not quite the same as seeing these turtles move about the landscape. So first, I'm going to show you an example of how a typical wood turtle moves about the landscape. I have a project where I put GPS loggers on a handful of turtles. Those loggers record a location every 4 hours, and then I can just go out and download the data periodically and see where these turtles went. And this first example will be of a wood turtle that didn't go very far. This is one of the smallest home ranges I've seen in a wood turtle. This one will be a female. Females tend to travel a little less far than the males, but there are exceptions. So I want to first draw you to the scale bar, 500 feet. And that means we're just not looking at a very big area here. So here she comes, wakes up in the spring, forages a little bit, starts stretching her legs, heads to some of her favorite foraging spots. And she just sort of bounces around a bunch, spent some time in mostly forested environments. She spent about a month in the mowed right-of-way under a guardrail next to a state highway, which made me very nervous. And the change in color is just supposed to show time progressing. So you can see certain areas where there are different colors overlapping, means she goes to that spot multiple times through the year. And September, right back where she started. Wood turtles usually will overwinter at about the same spot every year. Sometimes they'll pick a different microhabitat, and occasionally they'll travel to an entirely different area to overwinter. All right, so that was a 500-foot scale bar. Here we have a half-mile scale bar, and this is another female. And I think this is where you really get to understand how these turtles can use upland habitat. So here she goes. And right about here, I lost track of her for a couple months. She has a radio transmitter. I couldn't get a signal. There's just ridges in the way. And I didn't find her again until her next move. So at this point, she's crossed a highway, spending a lot of time in this wet farm field. And right about here is where I caught back up with her and downloaded the data. And what I knew before I downloaded her data and pulled up this map was that she spent time on the stream on one side of the road, went in the woods a little bit, and then I lost her, and she shows up on the other side of the road back on the stream. And if I had to guess, I'd think, well, she probably just took the stream and crossed the road. But actually, she did like a 4-mile loop through the woods and then doubled back. And she did overwinter in a different area than where she started. But since then, she has completed the circle. And I'll be honest, I have no idea where she is right now, but I'll try to figure that out over the next couple of weeks. And then we'll do one more. This is a young adult male. And again, half-mile scale bar. This was the record breaker for last year's field season. So he'll spend time in an area about a week or two and then cover some ground and then settle down. And when he's actually covering ground and trying to get from one place to another, he was able to do about half a mile per day over land for the most part. All right, so right where he is right now is about where he settles down for the winter. But so he used the stream, he used hardwood forest, he used mixed forest, he used coniferous forest, he used farm fields, he used wetlands. I'm running out of habitat. He used everything. Like on land, these are habitat generalists. They're where they're specific is in their overwintering requirements and really needing that valley stream. And they have some things that they prefer for their nest sites. But in the summer, these turtles can turn up just about anywhere. So while I'd never expect to bump into a wood turtle in my day-to-day life when I'm not on the job, it could happen. You could step outside, all of you right now, and find a wood turtle on your back steps. It happens. So my point in showing these maps is to demonstrate that wood turtle conservation really needs to account for these landscape level movements. If you have a particular property that you're managing or that you own and you want to do things for wood turtles, like that's great. You can do a lot of good on a specific property, but to conserve a population of wood turtles, it doesn't matter how good you make a specific property if those turtles are traveling 2 miles away on a yearly basis and getting killed in farm fields, miles downstream. So taking a landscape level approach and how we're approaching conservation for wood turtles is not to just jump up at every opportunity for wood turtle restoration and just take a willy-nilly approach and do things wherever we can find a project. We're targeting our landowner outreach and our habitat restoration efforts to focal areas that have been determined for one reason or another to be a high priority area for wood turtle conservation. And while I can't say where those areas are in a presentation like this, if landowners or land managers reach out and they have a property that they think might be a good match for wood turtles, I'm happy to take a look and provide advice. And if it turns out to be in one of those higher priority areas, you'll get a little bit more of my time and attention moving forward. But even for those properties and opportunities outside of those high priority areas, it's still worth pursuing wood turtle conservation. It's just I'm not going to spend resources on one of the lower priority sites that I could otherwise spend on a high priority site, where over the course of 10, 15, 20 years, we can make a big difference for these turtles at the landscape level. And yeah, my parting thoughts here are that it's about more than wood turtles. I think wood turtles make a great flagship species for a variety of reasons. Like first, they're an animal that really tie land and water resources together. And if you're doing habitat restoration for wood turtles, those same practices reduce erosion, reduce nutrient runoff into rivers. That improves recreational opportunities. It improves fisheries. It just overall improves habitat for a variety of wildlife. Like anything using river valleys is going to benefit from wood turtle conservation. But because we have this adorable turtle that is very charismatic and really tugs at the heartstrings, I think when people realize that this animal is one that they're sharing the landscape with, most people feel a desire to do something to protect or help the wood turtle. So they're a species we can really achieve a lot of conservation through. That's just conservation in the bigger sense. Like I'm in it for the turtles, but I'm really in it for river valley habitat landscape restoration and just moving that needle forward. And back on the whole ambassador thing, this was a family that I met in New York last year. They had no idea that wood turtles were in their farm fields, and the landowner was more than happy to have me survey their stream front their stream. And on the very first day, we found a couple wood turtles. It's not a really important spot for wood turtles, I think, but the farmers' kids tagged along for the survey. Normally, I might have been a little reluctant about that, but we stayed pretty much within sight of the barn the whole time, and the kids seemed like they knew what pucker brush and thorns were, so brought them along. And they had a great time. They asked a lot of really awesome questions, really smart kids. But what I didn't expect was when I went back to that farm about 3 weeks later to do the next survey, their mom said that those kids would not shut up about the turtles for the next 3 weeks. So by getting the kids invested, now I have these advocates in that farmer's household that are doing some of my work for me, convincing their parents to do something to help these turtles. And a point that I like to end at is that every property is different. What landowners need from their property is going to be different. How turtles use each property is going to be different. So wood turtle conservation isn't something that I think of on a case by case, or isn't something that I think of on a one size fits all level. There's a lot of case by case things to consider, and something that's good for one property might not be good for another. And sometimes there are things that might be counterintuitive that actually make a lot of sense for wood turtles. So there's just a lot of flexibility that needs to be considered for wood turtle conservation. And that's why I'm really happy to talk with anyone who owns or manages or has a stake in the management of a property that has these animals. And I'm happy to give you my thoughts about what might make sense for that particular property. So that's what I have for you, and happy to stay on and take questions.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Kiley. Thank you, Molly, for joining us tonight and for sharing such a great overview of the situation with wood turtles. I think you covered a lot of ground, gave us a lot of great information. So thank you so much for joining us tonight and presenting this webinar. I just a note to folks, I did put a link to the publication in the chat box. So if you haven't seen it, feel free to just go ahead and click on the link in the chat box. It's a PDF, download it. And all of the information that Molly shared tonight is in that document. So, lots of great information in there. Like Kiley said, good advice, both for good recommendations, both for wood turtles, but also for thinking about sustainable forestry and other considerations. So please, now you guys are all turtle ambassadors in many respects. And, my hope for the webinar tonight is that, we, Vermont Woodlands Association as an organization, we're really excited to be a part of bringing this information to you so that we can all voluntarily sort of do, make decisions on the land with wood turtles and other species considerations in mind. So again, thanks to our presenters tonight for sharing all this great information. I did put also a link in the chat box to the resource from the Vermont Herp Atlas on submitting sightings, Molly. So folks should have access to that. Molly, if you want to go ahead and I see, Kiley, your email address is up here on the screen. But Molly, if you want to go ahead and put your email address in the chat box, I'd love for you to do that so folks have a way to follow up with you. And I think one of the take-home messages for me is both you, Molly, and Kiley have offered, your willingness to follow up with landowners and, have a conversation with folks who think that they might have wood turtles or are thinking about forest management and want to, incorporate some of these recommendations into their future forestry projects on their land. So please, I encourage folks to take advantage of both Kiley and Molly and all the resources available to help support informed decision-making on our land. And so with that, again, thank you so much to our presenters. We do have, there was a quick question in the chat box about making the PowerPoint from tonight available. And Kiley, I just wanted to touch base with you. I know that there's a lot of considerations around, this issue. And so I wasn't sure. I will be following up with folks with a follow-up email with a list of resources. Kiley, I was taking tons of notes as you were talking about all the funding resources. So I will follow up with folks with an email with additional resources. So Kiley, while you're thinking about let me know if you want to make the PowerPoint available. We can make that available through the email as well. Before we sign off tonight, though, I did want to just let folks know I'm inspired to get out and look for wood turtles on my own property here. But there is an upcoming walk next weekend. Vermont Woodlands Association, in partnership with Kiley, is hosting a woods walk where we're going to go out and actually look at some habitat and talk about this issue out in the field and sort of really think about kind of some of these land-based management decisions that impact habitat and populations. So if folks are interested, I'll put a link into our calendar of events, but that event will be Saturday, June 22nd. It'll be 10 to 12:30, I think we said, Kiley. And it'll be over in the Addison County area. We're not going to share the exact location until you register. So we'll send you directions. We're not going to make you guess, but we are keeping that exact location under wraps for now. But it will be a great opportunity to get out in the field. As you can tell, Kylie's really passionate and knowledgeable about this issue. It'll be a great opportunity to get out in the field with him to talk more about this to talk more about wood turtles. So please keep that in mind. And if you're available, join us on Saturday for that woods walk. And then I am going to put in a quick shameless plug for, so as I mentioned in the beginning, this is part of our Climate Smart Forestry series. We do have more programming coming up in July, and I'll put a link in the chat to to that as well. But our next topic we'll be looking at Vermont's newest natural community. So hardwoods, seepage forests will be the focus for July, and we'll have a presentation via webinar and also a woods walk scheduled in July as well. So just a quick plug for the next climate series program. And with that, if folks want to head off for the evening, thank you so much for joining us. I'm happy to stick around if folks have questions. Feel free to stick around, and if Kiley and Molly, if you're willing, we could probably take a couple of questions here.
While people are thinking about their questions, I saw one in the chat and then it got unasked, but I can kind of answer the question anyway. Question was, is the Connecticut River a major habitat for wood turtles? And at that scale, like, yeah, we try to keep sites secret. What I can say about the Connecticut River is that it's a massive watershed, and nestled within its boundaries are some high priority places for wood turtle conservation. But like when rivers get to the size of the Connecticut, while there are wood turtles in the main stem, I think intense flooding makes it a little the sort of river where I wouldn't expect to find hot spots very easily. So they're scattered around there, but it's a huge river with a lot of habitat. And as far as wood turtle conservation, I'm more interested in some of the tributaries feeding into the Connecticut.
Great, thanks. And Peter, I don't know if you had a question or not. I see you had put a question mark in the chat box. So, okay. Well, great. Again, thanks, Kiley and Molly, for your time tonight, for sharing and both your expertise and passion and all these great recommendations. Again, I think a lot of great information out there. Really encourage folks, if you haven't already, go ahead and download that link to the PDF the considerations for forest landowners. There's a lot of great information in there, and thank you everybody for your interest in this topic. So with that, I'll let you guys go for the evening, and let's all go out and look at our backyards for those wood turtles, right?
All right. Thank you, Kate, and thank you for everyone for showing up and for your interest.